Kerry is a retired educator who spent 22 years teaching in both public and private schools. In addition, she worked as dean of students at a small college in upstate New York and presently serves as the director of education for her church. She's a published author and also recording artist. In 2022, Kerry initiated the Pike County chapter for Moms of Liberty as a means by which to help educate and empower parents to defend their parental rights at all levels of government. Please watch and share her video on Rumble called Critical Race Theory in U.S. Public Schools. Welcome, Kerry, to the show.
Thanks for having me, Anastasia. It's really great to be with you.
Fabulous. I think that most of our viewers are aware that there is a systemic takeover of our children's education today. Please provide us with a historical perspective of what you and many others call a Marxist agenda.
Well, yeah. We could easily spend a whole college semester talking about this and more. But I know that's just kind of the beginning part of what we want to talk about today. And I really encourage people to watch the video. And if you want a deeper dive and really see the valid belief that there is a Marxist takeover of our government and our schools, read a book called Race Marxism by James Lindsay. Excellent, excellent book. In a nutshell, for those that may not be familiar with it, after the Bolshevik Revolution, when Marx wanted to move Marxism to the West, Marxist scholars realized that the bourgeoisie and the proletariat dynamic was not going to work in the West. And so something was changed, something was introduced called critical theory. And in critical theory, then it was, rather than having the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, it became, let's talk about race. Let's use race in the West. Let's use gender in the West, but especially race. And the thing that I really want to emphasize is the dynamic that was continued in terms of the oppressed versus the oppressor. And that's what you see in what you call woke ideology. It's all based on the premise that there is an oppressed class and an oppressor class. And with critical race theory, it really focuses on the identity politics of race. And so that's what, in my research, what I saw happening in spades in U.S. public schools.
Well, Marxism, we're accustomed to hearing about through history, through wars and oppression. We never thought necessarily would hit us with our children, with our most vulnerable. And I think this is why many of us find this very disturbing. But let's take a step back of what's going on today and how it's being implemented. So explain to us how the state of our public schools, what that state is going on right now in our public schools nationwide, because there is a definite organized plan going on.
Well, I'm not privy to the blueprints that they have in place, but all I can tell you is that it's pervasive and it's been going on for a long time. And the reason I say that is the evidence that I find. I do want to make one important point that I think often escapes us. And in the dearth of religious studies in public schools, people use the famous separation of church and state, or no religion should be allowed in public schools. What I want to say is there is a religion in public schools, and it's called secular humanism. And that's very important to acknowledge, because it does not allow freedom of conversation and freedom of thought and freedom to pursue the narrative of the possibility of a transcendent truth or a transcendent being. Okay, the curriculum, the narratives, the perspective of the public education institutions is that human beings are central to understanding the nature of reality. Truth is relative. There is no absolute truth. And that's why you can have today with, for instance, children coming to their guidance counselor or their teacher and saying, you know, I was born as a biological male, but I think I'm a female. I think I'm a girl. And that lived experience is seen as, if it's true for you, it must be true. Okay, and so it needs to be acknowledged that there is a very limited perspective that's being presented in public schools, and so I think it's important to acknowledge that.
Well, Kerry, you've taught all these years, and I'm formerly part of education as well in New York, and we never thought it'd get like this because, many times as parents, as grandparents, we always knew wherever the child, their status was in education, that if a teacher always knew if the parent was involved, the child would improve, regardless of where they start off at. And it seems now, especially for myself, I have a 6-year-old and 11-year-old, and I see it that in a sense, we're kind of getting pushed out of the formula because we don't know enough or let the professionals handle this. And that's a very scary concept because we're the caretakers. There are children. So there's definitely a lot of parents, I think, feel that there's something definitely going on. So what is your experience here in Pennsylvania? What do you see going on in the school boards? Because I know you're really involved in that.
To be honest with you, it's frightening. I'm glad that my kids are grown. In Pennsylvania law, a child can come to a counselor or some person that he trusts and share something, and the school is under no obligation to notify the parents if they determine that this is in the child's best interests. And honestly speaking, I don't want to get lost in the crosshairs, but there is a certain confidentiality if you're a guidance counselor at a school. All right, there is a certain confidentiality, but what the problem is that these schools have embraced the woke ideology, especially, I don't want to keep harping on it, but it is what is the most alarming development is the gender identity. Just recently here in Pennsylvania, in the Greater Johnston School District, there was a plan for students that was submitted. I don't know if it was absolutely passed, but I know that it was submitted, that the school is not required to consent to get the consent of the parents to begin gender transition. All right. I can tell you also that this is also another key aspect of the Marxist infiltration, because in a nutshell, the Marxism, communism, woke ideology says that the state has ultimate authority. Traditionally, parents had the ultimate authority, but that is being swept out from under our feet. In Delaware Valley, I'll tell you a story of an 11-year-old, sixth grader. She came home with a book that her mother did not approve of. And her mother took it to the school and said she did not want her child checking out books like this. Was told by and then asked the librarian, she wanted to see all the books that her daughter had checked out in the school year. And the librarian said, well, you need your daughter's permission.
That is ridiculous.
And when I pursued this with the principal, as a taxpayer, my tax dollars are going to support what is going on in our government schools. I was not given an answer. So I do want to say, though, Anastasia, that I really want to work together with the school district that I am a part of. I do not see them as the enemy. I believe the vast majority of them really want is best for our children. And as I learn more and more about what's going on, I am really going to appeal to the conscience of the school board. The school board directors, they're called directors for a reason. They represent the people, and they are our voice. School board, the administration, they have their solicitor, they have their lawyer to keep them up to date. Who do we have? We have the school board. And if the school board is not aware of something, it's our responsibility to let them know. I can share something recently about, I don't know if you're aware of the plethora of surveys that children are being subjected to. It
Yeah.
is not it is not a conspiracy. I believe you got a letter recently that letting you know that the children were going to be surveyed, right? And that you had the option to opt out. Was that correct?
Well, no, I did not have an option to opt out. Which was interesting to me was I knew about these surveys the last couple of years for sixth graders and up, and they were disturbing to me because of the questions the intrusive questions that they would sneak in about sexuality. And it looked almost like a mental kind of something you would take at a doctor's office if you were trying to commit suicide type of thing. Very intrusive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was in shock to see that my first grader, we received a letter home, and it said about surveys, and that we would be providing surveys to your child, and there was no opt in or opt out. But what it said was, if you don't want if your child participating, okay, to get in touch with the counselor. And I wondered to myself, I said, how many parents, number one, are going to do that? Okay, right? Because it's offensive to think that everyone is already opted in, and that you as a parent have to go out of your way and understand that you also have an opt-out option, and that your child actually has a file. So tell me, Kerry, is there a document out there? What is the suggestion to parents to opt out?
Well, at this point, to my knowledge, they have to take the initiative to request that their child be opted out. But there's a problem with that. And the problem is we don't know how many surveys are going to be given to our children, how many notes that come home, especially from young children, that they're going to give them to elementary children. What is the guarantee that parents are going to be made aware that their child is being given a survey, and also the nature of the survey? This is I don't know if you're aware of it, but we're a little bit gun shy with the surveys, because years ago there was a diversity, equity, and inclusion survey where middle school students as well as high school students, without any notification to the parents, were asked many questions about how did they feel about diversity, how did they feel about the racial atmosphere in the school. And one little girl, well, she wasn't so little, she was a middle school girl, and she came home and asked her mother, she was a Black girl, and she asked her mother, could she still be friends with her best friend who was white? That somehow bringing this to her attention made her think that she had to be separate. There was also the famous tobacco survey, which was given several years ago, in which question, I believe it's 156, was, are you transgender? This is in a tobacco survey. Also, many questions were given about the economic status of the family, personal questions about mental health, and about their family relationships. But rather than just pointing out this one survey, what is really important for people to know is this is all a part of the social and emotional learning strategies, of which surveys is a very important part. And I know I don't have a whole lot of time to talk, but I really want to say that, and I don't use the word insidious lightly, but I really believe it is insidious, and it's the most damaging part of what's going on in our schools. SEL stands for social and emotional learning. Sounds great, right? I remember when I talked to a school board member at a private meeting. She looked at me like, what is your problem? Social and emotional learning is important for children. Well, words are tricky, and words are very manipulative. And SEL programs, I'm telling you right now, was devised by CASEL. CASEL is a greatly funded organization that stands for Collaborate academics for social and emotional learning. Contributors are Chan Zuckerberg, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Rockefellers, Eileen Rothschild, and Growald. The goal of these organizations is global education and indoctrination. In 2021, there were $765 million of sales of SEL materials. What does SEL do? It's designed to shape the child's developing brain to accept particular worldviews regarding sexuality, racial attitudes, and other social issues under the guise of providing a mental health benefit. It may sound extreme, but the more you research it, the more evidence you will find. I'll talk about Delaware Valley. Whoever receives ESSER grants, of whom Delaware Valley was one, is required to implement social and emotional learning. I had a chance to look at the 4th grade curriculum at Delaware Valley, and added to all of the objectives in language arts was social and emotional learning. I can't tell you what this means. I can't tell you how they're implementing it, but I can tell you that there's an agenda that's coming from the state and national level that is being implemented. There's a book series called Reading Wonders in Delaware Valley. And in these books, there is the 3rd grade level, there's story after story about the Jim Crow laws and signs that say whites only on the walls, and questions over and over again in the book about, how do you feel about this? And my question is an 8-year-old, is a 3rd grader capable of putting Jim Crow laws in the proper historical context? And this is just one example. And I have to say that this part of the United States, of Pennsylvania, is not as far along as places like California or even New Jersey, where 3rd graders are deconstructing their racial identities according to power and privilege. So this is happening all across the country. And in addition to SEL, then the surveys are being given to acquire data. Data mining is a reality. And data mining is done almost all electronically, and they're collecting mental health data on our students. This is a permanent record. This is something very similar to social credit scores in China. And people may not know it, but President Obama awarded $4 billion to states who were agreeing to build or improve their statewide longitudinal data systems. And this can affect children long-term when they're looking for secondary education opportunities, or maybe a career in the military, or just in the general workforce. There is a basic growing perspective, and if you research it, once again, you'll find it, that basically all students have a mental health issue. They're being castigated as being in need. And so this allows for greater control of the schools in the state.
No, it's disgusting because we didn't have that growing up. This is kind of the new thing with the surveys. I mean, I remember over a decade ago, maybe you had one survey and it was kind of a short survey and it kind of made sense, maybe how to budget things, or, I mean, that's the way I remember it. But we haven't seen the fallout yet because this just started. And once we get to the fallout of a graduating student who has a file that's kind of a thick file of a profile, and now they're applying for a job, and we don't know how that data mining is going to be affecting them because we don't see the outcome yet. We're in the midst of it. So
that's a really good point.
Kerry, let me ask you this question because, my kids are in Delaware Valley, and I know a lot of really good parents. And I'm going to be really honest with you. We want to be the rah-rah parents, right? We all want our children to be, and there's a lot of good teachers still there, and there's a lot of good there. I do believe that. But what I see also is that I don't think that they want to see, most people don't want to recognize this, because now you have to do something, right? And you don't want to be that person. So how do we get parents? Because that's, I think, the $1 million question is, how do you get them involved to attend school board meetings, to actually ask these questions and maybe come to their very own conclusions. No one is telling you what to believe, but you need to get involved. So how do we get them involved?
Well, Anastasia, you're doing it right now. My friend, you're doing it right now. Is we have to educate people. We have to be the Paul Revere's of this generation and say the British are coming. Okay, it's a lot sneakier now. Okay, but it's the same principle. It's the same idea. It means maybe being a little uncomfortable, and it's a matter of understanding what's at stake. Okay, I may think, well, my kids are okay. I can protect them. I can opt out of surveys, and we have a good relationship, and we go to, we go to church on Sunday, or whatever your belief is. But the fact is that our children are going to inherit the world that is being created. This problem did not occur overnight. It is not going to be solved overnight. I think it's a bit of a pain principle. Usually we become involved when the pain of not doing something is worse than the pain of doing something. So honestly, it's not always what I want to do on a Thursday night, go to a work session or go to a school board meeting. But I'm going to be honest with you, the pain of seeing what's happening to my country, the pain of seeing some of the things that I've seen happen in my school district is more troubling to me. So I think the more that parents realize that whether or not their children are being personally affected, and we don't know, honestly speaking, we don't know everything that goes on in schools. At one school in Pennsylvania, they had a news broadcast that was shown in the morning, and this was a very liberal news broadcast. And it's when Trump was saying "Make America Great Again," they said, Hitler also said "Make Germany great again." So these connections are being made without our knowledge, and regardless of your political affiliation. School is a place where people should learn how to read, write, and do arithmetic. We are now 26th on a worldwide scale of academic level of students. 77% of our students graduate in America without basic proficiency in reading, writing, and arithmetic, the basics. So school is not a place for social engineering. School is not a place where the administration and the teachers take the place of the parents. Parents need to be supported and encouraged, and children deserve a real good academic education, what will prepare them to have a successful future.
Absolutely. Now,
it's really not that complicated.
How do they get involved in an organization like Moms for Liberty? They feel compelled, they saw this video, they did their own research, and they want to do something about it, because I think there's correct me if I'm wrong, Moms for Liberty is national, and there is chapters locally. So what can people do?
Go on the Moms for Liberty. We have monthly meetings. Most of them are by Zoom, and that's where we go over the agendas of what is coming up at the next school board meeting. I want to be proactive. I don't want to go to school board meetings and complain about this and that and the other thing. I want to assist the school board directors in coming up with viable solutions to taking care of things which are not in the best interest of our children. Attend school board meetings.
And the good news is we just had an election. So we did have across Pennsylvania, and we saw this nationally, is good people are standing up and they're throwing in their hats to run. And some good people are getting in to share and provide, a different perspective and embrace some of these things that they need to problem solve on. You get a lot of pressures from the unions. You get a lot of pressures from politics, and legislation, which is a whole not enough. In this, what you'll hear from a lot of these, school board directors is, that's a state law, or this is what the, is prescribed to us. We can only follow the law, and that becomes a problem. What I like about Moms for Liberty is that they do deal with legislative issues head on, and you need to be empowered. Don't need to reinvent the wheel. Join one of these organizations. I know locally we also have Pennsylvania Advocacy for Children's Education. Join one of these groups, get involved, try to learn, and make the difference, and work, like you said, which I really like, Kerry, work with your school board, because everybody wants a resolution for our children to have the best education possible. That I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate what you just said, and I appreciate the work that you're doing, Anastasia. And I just want to close with, many people see and agree with things that you and I are talking about, but they feel powerless. Oh, I can't do a different. I can't make a difference. It's too far gone. That's not true. But don't wait for the solution to come, from a flaming pie in the air. It's going to come from you. It's going to come from you getting involved on the local level. Start by educating yourself. Everybody can do something. And I really believe that's the way that our country is going to be saved, by people responding to their own consciences and doing their own part. We all have a gift. We all have I believe, a calling. And this country, a lot of blood was shed to give us our freedoms, and we owe it. We owe it to our founders, and we owe it to the people that sacrificed so much to preserve what is still the greatest country on earth.
Well, thank you so much, Kerry, for your fighting spirit and for being an educator in this issue that greatly affects, our most vulnerable. And we continue to ring that bell and say, whatever you can do, remember one thing: hold that line for our children and for the next generation. Thank you so much, Kerry. God bless you.
Okay, thanks so much. My pleasure.